When most gardeners build raised beds, they dream of rich, loose soil swarming with earthworms. Worms are the silent workforce of the garden, breaking down organic matter, aerating soil, and creating humus that holds water and nutrients. But here's the hidden truth. Many raised bed setups are unknowingly hostile to worms. Gardeners add the wrong materials, water in the wrong way, or even create toxic conditions without realizing it. And the result is a bed that looks fine on the surface but is lifeless underneath. If you've ever wondered why your worms disappear, or why they never seem to thrive in your raised beds, this guide will expose the most common mistakes that push them away, along with the fixes that bring them back fast. One of the first mistakes happens before a single seed is planted. Many gardeners fill raised beds with bagged mixes heavy in peat moss, perlite, or sterile potting blends. While these mixes are lightweight and easy to handle, they are practically desert conditions for worms. Worms need mineral content, organic matter, and a certain level of microbial activity to survive. A sterile peat-heavy mix lacks food, and worms quickly migrate out or die off. The fix is simple but crucial. Blend your raised bed fill with actual topsoil and compost. Topsoil provides the mineral base that worms require, while compost introduces food and microbial life. A raised bed built on a foundation of nothing but fluffy mix may grow plants in the short term, but it will never build the worm populations needed for long-term fertility. Another hidden killer of worms in raised beds is over-amendment. Many gardeners, eager to supercharge their soil, dump in concentrated fertilizers, lime, or even raw amendments like uncomposted manure. Worms are highly sensitive to salt levels and pH spikes, and these inputs can create toxic zones that worms abandon. Even organic fertilizers, if over-applied, can burn worms just as they burn plant roots. To fix this, less is more. Instead of pouring in strong fertilizers, focus on slow, balanced feeding through compost, leaf mold, and aged manures. These break down gradually, keeping the soil environment safe for worms. When concentrated inputs are needed, like blood meal, bone meal, or lime, they should be used in moderation and mixed evenly into the soil rather than layered in clumps. Worms thrive in balance, not excess. Moisture is life for worms. Raised beds are notorious for drying out faster than in-ground soil because they are elevated and exposed on all sides. Gardeners who forget to water deeply or who rely on surface watering only often end up with a bed that looks damp on top but is bone dry below. Worms cannot survive in dry soil, so they either burrow down far below the bed or die off entirely. The solution is consistent: deep watering. Instead of light sprinkles, soak the bed thoroughly so moisture penetrates all the way through the soil profile. Mulching is also essential, as a thick cover of straw, shredded leaves, or compost keeps moisture in and creates the damp, cool conditions worms love. In dry raised beds, worms are the first to leave, so water management is non-negotiable if you want them to stay. You know, a lot of gardeners add fresh wood chips or sawdust into raised beds, thinking it'll improve the texture. But when these materials are mixed directly into the soil, they actually rob nitrogen as they decompose. This creates a soil imbalance that leaves very little food for worms, and honestly, it stunts plant growth at the same time. In some cases, fresh sawdust can even compact and create an oxygen-poor environment that worms just can't tolerate. So the fix is to use woody materials only as surface mulch, not mixed into the soil. On the surface, they slowly break down, create habitat, and keep moisture levels steady, conditions that worms really appreciate. If you want to add carbon-rich materials into the bed itself, you should use shredded leaves, aged compost, or partially broken down chips. Worms thrive on organic matter that is already in the process of decay, not fresh material that steals nutrients during decomposition. Worms don't live in soil just because it's there. They stay because there's food. In raised beds that are managed like sterile boxes with nothing added but plants and water, worms eventually run out of organic matter and slowly disappear. They need a steady diet of decomposing material to sustain their populations. Without it, they either leave or die off, and the soil becomes compacted and lifeless over time. So the fix here is to regularly feed your worms with small, consistent inputs of organic matter. But this doesn't mean just dumping kitchen scraps directly into the bed, since that can attract pests. Instead, try layering in compost, leaf mold, or even finely chopped garden waste. Mulching with leaves and grass clippings, well, that also creates an ongoing food source for your worms. Think of it this way. A raised bed without regular feeding is like a house with no pantry. Eventually no one sticks around. Another mistake folks sometimes make is forgetting that even raised beds can become compacted. Over time, if soil is left bare or gardeners walk across the beds, the structure just collapses. Compaction, well, it reduces oxygen, squeezes out those important air pockets, and makes it tough for worms to move freely. And remember, worms actually breathe through their skin, which really requires oxygen-rich moisture. In compacted soil, they basically suffocate and end up leaving. The fix for this is to never step into your raised beds and to maintain soil structure with organic matter. Cover crops can be a fantastic way to loosen the soil naturally, since roots create channels that worms later use. Regular additions of compost and mulch also help prevent compaction by encouraging aeration through both microbial and worm activity. Honestly, a loose, well-structured bed is a worm magnet, while compacted soil is, well, a death trap. So perhaps the most overlooked mistake in modern raised beds is, well, chemical contamination. Many manures, straw bales, or even bagged compost these days can carry residues of persistent herbicides. These chemicals actually pass through animals that eat sprayed hay, or they just remain in soil amendments for years. When they're brought into raised beds, they don't just stunt plant growth, they also decimate worm populations. Worms either avoid or die in contaminated soil, which leaves gardeners puzzled as to why, life never really returns. The fix is to source clean inputs. Always ask about herbicide use when getting manure, straw, or hay. Compost from unknown sources should be tested by trialing it on a few plants before adding it widely. Once contamination enters a raised bed, it is difficult to undo, so prevention is key. Your grandparents didn't have to deal with modern herbicides, but today it's one of the biggest hidden threats to worms in raised beds. Raised beds can either be thriving ecosystems or sterile boxes depending on how they are managed. The difference often comes down to whether or not worms are present and active. These mistakes, wrong soil mixes, overuse of amendments, lack of moisture, improper mulching, poor feeding, compaction, and contamination, are all preventable. By correcting them, gardeners can turn raised beds into worm-rich living soils that support healthy crops year after year. Earthworms are the most reliable signal that your soil is alive. If they are missing, something is wrong. Fixing these mistakes not only brings worms back, but also revives the entire soil food web that supports your garden. For more deep, practical guides on soil health and time-tested methods to keep your garden thriving, subscribe to Soil and Plant Doctor and share this video with fellow growers. Together, we can build raised beds that don't just grow plants, but grow soil for the future.